He casts the net wide, and they help. This is life after disaster. Pinky cuts grass to feed animals. And Kapil, he helps Dad out. They still get to run. What they really need is a little bit more of what they all lost. Help them catch up to the education of kids their age.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Today's gathering is under the theme of empowerment through education, something which is instilled in Dubai Cares programming and our methodology. These two strong words, education and empowerment, are two main fundamentals what the UAE government and our leadership has focused upon since the inception of the UAE and even today. Today, wherever the UAE is globally, is thanks to partly to those two main fundamentals. We have been also fortunate enough, and our children today, to get good standards of education here in our country. But that's not the situation with children in other countries. Children who are living in developing countries, who don't have access to education, let alone quality education. I would like to thank you, Your Excellency, for joining us today, to sparing time to speak about the journey of empowerment through education. And I would like to thank Mohammed Sidi Bey and even Vivian Onanu for crossing thousands of miles from different continents to join us here today to speak about your personal experiences and how you lived that life and where you are today and what you're embarking upon. So thank you very much for joining us. I would also like to thank, a very big thanks actually, to Armani Hotel for generously hosting this entire venue. So Rida, wherever you're seated, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, education is not a luxury. It's a necessity, a fundamental right for children. Access to this right should never be confined by borders, income, or disability. This belief isn't ours only. We know that it's yours too, as you have supported this important cause and the work of Dubai Cares across the years. The short video you saw at the beginning sheds light on the plight of children who are affected by conflicts and natural disasters. We believe that education is a fundamental right of every child. Yet in times of conflict and disaster, access to education is disrupted and tends not to be prioritized, thus resulting in many cases in lost generations of children and youth. Our first speaker today is leading Dubai Cares efforts to improve children and young people's access to quality education in developing countries and contributing to sustainable development around the world. She will be addressing this gathering and talking about where education and empowerment stand. Please join me in welcoming UAE Minister for International Cooperation and the chairperson of Dubai Cares, my dear friend, my boss, Her Excellency Reem Al Hashimy.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم جميعا. It's lovely to be here with all of you. Thank you very much for joining us. And thank you for picking the theme of empowerment, Tariq, you and your team, and linking it to education and the importance of education. We live in a very privileged place. We don't really know or fully understand what it's like not to have access to education unless you actually go to the field. And I've had the privilege and the honor of representing both Dubai Cares but also my country in visiting all sorts of places all around the world. And it is difficult to visit a community that barely has a functioning school, or barely has enough space for students that are queuing up wanting to enter that school. Because for these families, education is not just how to read or how to write or how to understand your own mathematics. Education is your way out, your way up, your way to better places and better things. It's the freedom that if you don't have it, then you just won't really make it. And I'm so keen to hear from Mohammed and Vivian later on today, who've really experienced what this is like. Now, as you've all known and as you've all heard, so many different statistics about the hundreds of millions of children that are in school but are not learning anything, and the 70 or 80 million children who have no access to school, you'll recognize that our journey is really just beginning. There's still so much we need to do, and there's so much we need to do collectively. And I'm very grateful for not only the donor base that's present here today, the staff of Dubai Cares, the volunteers. I notice a few people representing schools that are also here, which is very rewarding for me to see that empowerment and education are themes that cut across different sections of our society. And that's really something very critical. But beyond the numbers, I think what's important for us to also emphasize is there are different levels of access to this education. So you have, as I've mentioned, 70 million children who have no access to schools. The percentage of girls who have no access to schools is a lot more than the percentage of boys who don't have access to schools. If you add those who don't have or who have disabilities, you will see that their access to schools is even less than other children. And so there are constantly these impediments that allow you access. And how else will a society thrive if children are not given the right ecosystem? And if they're not given that right ecosystem, then what's the future of that society ever going to be? I know I'm almost speaking to the converted, but I also believe that it takes more than one voice. It takes hundreds and thousands of voices to do exactly what I'm doing now, to do exactly what Tariq does, exactly what Mada does, who's in our Dubai Cares team. It takes everybody, those in the education sector or not in the education sector, to be advocates for change. And if we have tried to do anything successfully in Dubai Cares, and if there's anything that I will say is the moment that I'm most proud of, is that we've always punched above our weight. We've always tried to do a lot more. And definitely, we've always believed in the importance of creating positive change and creating positive impact. And in a way, and by extension, I try to take that spirit in the other hat I wear, which is Dubai Expo 2020, and to see how we can, through this global platform, which will open in a little bit less now than 2 years' time, where you have country representation from all over the world, how can Expo 2020 be that platform where you could have change makers welcomed, celebrated, replicated? That's, at the end of the day, what we need when we talk about a prosperous future, when we talk about the Sustainable Development Goals, when we talk about what the future we want to leave behind for our family and our children. It takes all of us, all the time, collectively, to do it again and again and again and again. It is not one person, it is not one country, it is not one institution. It needs everybody, because the task at hand is massive. And unless we all dedicate of ourselves towards that task will just continue to grow. As a parent of little children, I reject allowing that task to continue to grow unless I do everything I possibly can and ask you to do everything you possibly can. For you to then ask everybody that you know to do everything that they possibly can to change for the better. Because they deserve the best. Because our kids, the future generation, deserve only the very, very best. I will close with a very warm sense of gratitude to the Dubai Cares team. He calls me his boss, but sometimes I really wonder who's calling the shots. between me and Tariq Al-Gurg. He's a dear friend, a close brother, but to the Dubai Cares team, who really make us able to stand up here proud. To them, I extend my heartfelt thanks and gratitude and lots of love. I look forward to hearing out Mohammed and then later Vivian and then taking up your questions from the floor. Thank you very much.
She hides behind a makeshift door frame. They wait. She looks on as she stands by a rundown water tank. She brings Mum food, and they wait. This is home away from home, where life continues. Ali picks tomatoes. Allah helps with the cleaning, and Abir does the dishes. They all get to play. What they really need is a little bit more of what they all lost. Help them catch up to the education of kids their age.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for sharing your personal insights and how you look into how important it is for everyone to be involved. And I believe you're talking about the whole planet here, Your Excellency. And thank you for putting things into place on globally how the issue of education or how the solution to education is. Thank you. Our second speaker today will shed light on how he overcame adversity to become a leader in the human rights field. I have promised not to say much by way of introduction to allow him to tell his own story. Please join me in welcoming on stage our good friend, Mohammed Sidibé.
Thank you. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for having me. Each and every one of us in this room has done something right to be here. So, I ask you all to ask yourself, what have you done right to be here? My word for today is enough. Let it percolate. I'll get back to it. Who is fighting to save Sierra Leone? They said, as they blindfolded my eyes and made me shoot in the distance. RUF is fighting to save Sierra Leone. When the blindfolds were removed, I saw the holes our bullets had pierced and the bodies that lay down there lifeless. RUF is fighting to save our people. We were killing them and made to believe we were saving them. Go and tell the president Sierra Leone is my home. I no longer had a home, for we had set it ablaze. Go and tell my parents they may see me no more, for the real me died when I was only 5. And so it goes. In 1997, the Revolutionary United Front, RUF, came to my village and murdered my entire family and took me to be a child soldier. From 5 until 9, I saw the worst of humanity. There is tremendous evil in the world, and I saw it. You see, the men that took me from my home were not good people, because no matter how hard they tried to smile, they couldn't. What made him smile was what made him human, and what made him human was long gone. The smile on my face had disappeared. My innocence had been lost. My toys had been replaced with an AK-47, and the sudden change in my life was too quick to be true. So I grasped onto my past, thinking that that's the only world I had. When I was 5 years old, I want you to imagine what you were doing when you were 5. Enough. my word. I'll come back to it. See, like every war, the war in Sierra Leone eventually ended. When it did, I was 9 years old, homeless, orphaned, and have never seen the inside of a classroom. At 9 years old, I cannot read or write, but I could load and unload an AK-47. I want you to imagine what you were doing at 9, and I want you to contrast that with my life. See, I lived in a community that was angry because of what it had lost, yet forgetful of how much I too had lost. When I was 10 years old, I was enrolled in school. UNICEF came and tried to get me enrolled in school, and the school refused. So UNICEF bribed the entire school with book supplies in exchange for enrolling me. That was the first time I learned how to read and write. There's a power in being able to read your own name. There's something powerful in being able to write. Education gives people dignity. Education gave me dignity. 4 years of homelessness, I left Sierra Leone serendipitously and moved to the United States to give a speech entitled Children Caught in Cross Conflict. I left Sierra Leone thinking I was never going back because there's nothing to go back to. I thought America was the greatest country in the world. I thought there were no homeless people in America. I thought there were no poor people in America. I thought there were no uneducated people in America, because that was the America that I saw from behind my black and white television. When I arrived in America, I was homeless. I was 14 years old, barely spoke the language. America that I imagined and the America that I found myself in were two different Americas. But my life changed. My life changed because of education. When I started school in the U.S., I quickly realized the gap in my educational system. You see, the 4 years of education that I received in Sierra Leone, the 4 years of education that I received in my slum did not adequately prepare me for an American school. I was behind. I worked hard. I studied. And despite starting school late, 4 years after arriving in America, I graduated. I graduated high school, and I went to university. When I finished university 4 years later, I went to South America, Colombia, where I taught. So when I arrived in Colombia, I was teaching people who were afraid that they will never break the cycle of poverty in which they were born into. How do I tell them that there is hope? But how do I also break it to them that most of them will never make it out of poverty? Not because they're not smart enough, not because they're not hardworking enough, but because they've been denied access and opportunity, the opportunity that we all have. When I left Colombia, I came back to the U.S. I went home to Sierra Leone, where I started a small program that sent in over 100 kids to school. The goal is simple. You come, we will pay your school fees. In exchange, you have to agree to work 5 hours a week for us. And that 5 hours a week, you have to tutor someone who's not good at something. If you're good at math, you have to tutor someone who's not good at math. If you're not good at anything school-wise, someone will tutor you, but you have to do something for your community. Not too long ago, I started law school. It's my first year of law school. See, when I was asked to come speak here, I wonder what could I possibly say that hasn't already been said before. Her Excellency is right. I am speaking to converters, but there's always something more we can do. Because as we speak, there are 263 million children who do not have access to school. Education is a right, not a privilege. Because knowledge is infinite. It recognizes no boundary. It is not distinguished between race, gender, or nationality. Access and opportunity are limited. They're limited not by what you know, but by where you were born, the family you were born into, the country you're born into. That's what restricts your access. You see, I now have that which no country, man, or nation can take away from me. That is my education. My education has given me dignity. My education has given me power. My education has given me agency. Someone asked, what does humanitarianism mean to you? See, to me, humanitarianism is not helping out of pity, but it's having enough compassion to see yourself, to believe that the people you are helping are no different than you are. You just had different start in life, or you just had different luck paired with your hard work. That, to me, is what humanitarianism means. In 3 years, I will graduate law school. I never imagined that. I never imagined a world where I can sit and read Oscar Wilde, where I can sit and talk about Voltaire, where I can sit and talk about Kafka. That wasn't my world. That wasn't supposed to be my world. But it is my world now because of the work that organizations like Dubai Cares, UNICEF, and other great nonprofits out there are doing. Enough is my word. The country of your birth should not determine whether or not you are going to receive that which is rightfully yours. Access to quality and inclusive education. See, there's magic in the world. The imagination of a child is where we can find that magic. Let's protect it. Let's fight for it. Let's preserve it. Because it's the only real magic there ever will be. Thank you.
Thank you, Muhammad. I've known you for a while, and we keep on bumping into each other into a lot of education gatherings globally, and this always inspires me, and that's why I wanted you to speak out loud to the entire audience who are donors and supporters of Dubai Cares. So thank you, and I'm really always inspired by you talking. Before we move on to the next speaker, I would like to invite on stage an artist who was introduced to sand art by her teacher when she was 12 years old and quickly became very skilled at it. She is one of the few GCC nationals known for performing sand art and uses sand to spread awareness about issues close to her heart. Please join me in welcoming on stage Shayma Al-Mughiri. Oh, I mean, when the team told me we're going to do some sand stuff, I was like, yeah, I like it. I've seen it on America's Got Talent. But a few days later, I thought, how's she going to do it? How's she's going to bring all this to life? But Shema, thank you. You brought everything that we've been talking to life. Thank you. And I applaud your talent. Thank you very much. Our third speaker for today is an outspoken advocate for women and youth across Africa. She has a deep interest in redefining Africa's growth and development and creating an inclusive world where women and youth can play an important role. Please join me in welcoming on stage Vivian Onano.
Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. My name is Vivian Onano. I'm a Kenyan and a youth advocate. It's an honor and a privilege to be a part of this year's Dubai Cares event on empowerment through education. I feel really fired up and excited to be in a room full of men and women who strongly believe that investing in education is the smartest investment if you are to achieve peaceful, just, and sustainable development. Education is the best investment to pull us out of poverty and enable us to thrive. Without an education, you're voiceless, powerless, and forever entangled in a cycle of poverty. This is the reality for 262 million children and youth across the world. These kids are being denied an opportunity at a better life, an opportunity to maximize on their human talents, an opportunity to succeed and be counted. One of these children could have been me. I was born and raised in a village not so far from Lake Victoria in Western Kenya. My community did not appreciate girls' education. A majority of the young girls were married off at an early age in exchange of one or two dowry, or two cattle as a dowry price. Poverty and cultural norms were some of the reasons why this injustice had a place in my community. I even saw this happen to girls in my close extended family. The outcome was never pleasant. They could not take care of themselves, let alone the babies. Majority of them became victims of domestic violence, but had nowhere to go. They lost hope because life had nothing to offer. My mother at the time did not have as much education, but because of our struggles, she saw it necessary for me to get an education. It was not easy because she didn't have a job, but she struggled to sell milk, secondhand clothes, fish, just to make sure I had an education. For me, going to school was proving that educating a girl child is as important as educating a boy child. I grew up with no electricity, no running water, and sometimes standing under the kerosene lamp was tedious, but I had a goal. I wanted to make my mother proud, but more importantly, I wanted to be the reason why many other girls from my community could have an opportunity to access education. I graduated top of my class in primary school and received a full scholarship to one of the best girls' schools in Kenya. Sarai Girls was a dream come true. Without it, I would have never seen the doors of a high school. It was too expensive for my mother to afford, even though she really wanted me to get an education. From Sarai, I got a full scholarship to go to Carthage College in Wisconsin, where I graduated in 2014. And the good news is, my mother also went back to school, and she graduated in 2016 with a bachelor's in public health. Thank you, thank you. Since graduation, I've dedicated my life to advocate for girls' education. I've had the opportunity of working with both global and local organizations to make sure that every child has access to quality and safe education. but we are still far from getting there. I have traveled vastly across the continent, and every child I meet yearns for an education. I get really encouraged when I visit schools in rural areas where students don't have facilities and are studying under trees or seated on the floor. But these kids are still happy and determined. These happy faces confirms what education means to a young kid who is born out of poverty, and their only hope out of it is through education. Just by standing under that tree, they already believe that their lives are going to change for the best. These hopes and dreams have to be brought to life. And that is why the work that Dubai Cares is doing is really important. Education is currently under attack. And we have seen from the stories of the girls abducted in schools and the carrying bombing of school facilities. Education is becoming a matter of life and death for many children, mostly in crisis areas. They're forced to leave school or even move countries to have access to an education. Girls are severely affected. From rape to child marriage to sexual slavery. These girls are raped of their dreams and their human rights are violated. We cannot afford to keep quiet. One of these girls could have been me, could have been your daughter, could have been your sister. The world has become such a tiny global village, and we are interconnected as human beings. No child deserves to suffer to get an education. Women and girls cannot continue to be the face of poverty. It is important that in crisis areas, we take the education to the children rather than them having to risk their lives to have access. This may not be easy, as it requires more resources, and teachers need to be better trained and security to be provided to operate under such circumstances. If you're going to achieve Sustainable Development Goal 4 of making sure that every child has access to quality and safe education, we have to be very innovative in how we provide education, more so to the least marginalized. Holistic investment in the education of children in crisis environment is very, very important. It's not just about learning basic math and reading, but also learning about empathy, about peace, about love. They need to feel loved and their hopes rekindled. This is why investment in teachers is very important. They play a huge role in making sure these children's dreams and aspirations are never shattered. I am fortunate to be here because of my education. Education that has given me a voice. Education that has empowered me. And education that has opened doors to opportunities. There's so many talented and smart girls out there in northern Nigeria, in Bamako, in Afghanistan, in Bangladesh, in Colombia, who are yearning for an opportunity to have an education. We cannot afford to fail. Through my role as a youth advisor to the Global Education Monitoring Report, UNESCO, I commit to continue advocating for quality and safe education and holding both governments and private sectors accountable. It is within our generation to end poverty. And there is no better and faster way to do it than through access to quality, safe, and reliable education. Thank you again to Dubai Cares for the incredible work that you're doing. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your commitment towards making sure every child has an education. It is only through collaborative efforts that we can make Sustainable Development Goal 4 a reality. As the late Nobel laureate Dr. Wangari Maathai once said, it's the little things citizens do that will always make a difference. Continue doing your little thing to make sure that we don't fail the young boys and girls who are out there crying for an education. Thank you.
Thank you, Vivian.
Thank you.
Thank you for your inspirational story. And remember when we met, we were in a big round table discussing girls' education in emergencies.
Mm.
And I have to tell them what happened there. She was talking, and she was in the zone, and she was into it. And she was talking about rights of girls and women when it comes to crisis and emergencies. And while she was talking, and we're talking about a room filled with 50 or 60 people odd. And then while she was talking, she started crying. And I couldn't hold myself, and I couldn't hold, and then I started a bit into the same zone. You remember that moment? And I promised myself I will not cry today, so I didn't cry today. So she's an incredible woman, and her vision to Africa's development, education, and girls' education is enormous, and we would want a lot of you in the world, Vivian. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I would like to ask Her Excellency Reem Al Hashimy and Mohammed Sidibé to come on stage to have a discussion with the donors and the supporters, please. تفضلي في النص. Next to the minister.
Excellency.
تفضلي هنا. Okay, open session, open discussion. So, who would go first? Rajan, please. Just 1 second.
My name is Dr. Kilachan. I come from India. I actually came to this land before it was a country as a student in 1968 and stayed in the desert in summer without air conditioning. So you begin to understand how people survive for thousands of years. But nevertheless, as my life progressed, and I've been here now, I live in Dubai, and it's for good for the last 25 years. And part of my upbringing, a very strong part of my upbringing has been always to give back to society and not just cut checks, but make sure that instead of scattering it, select one area, which I did, was education in the field of medical for the benefit of mankind, whether it's hospitals, whether it's colleges, whether it's research. We now talk about 263 million young children who are without any access to any form of education from the primary level going up. And I fully agree with you. It's, and all of them, I would imagine, 95%, 99% would be in the developing world. Mm-hmm. And I have found that one of the biggest hurdles for people, and there are, believe me, much more than people know, tens of millions who are ready to come forth with a helping hand, primarily monetary, but who do not trust their governments, who do not trust national, state, local governments, that the money would be used appropriately and wisely. Dubai Cares is one of the greatest shining examples on the planet. And I don't mean this to flatter you, Your Excellency. I happen to be on the board of trustees of Boston University in the United States for the last, 8-10 years. And the biggest problem that we have today as philanthropists or donors is to have institutions like Dubai Cares who can actually honestly implement what is supposed to happen and get done. So have you ever thought about, and I said the same thing to Bill Gates a couple of months ago when he was here in Dubai, and I said, in my opinion, pledging 45 billion is no big deal. It's being done, if you go back thousands of years, in a different currency. It's great, it's fantastic. But what you really have is a built-in institution which can go worldwide and make sure this happens. And he said, yes, I've got about 1,500 scientists working for me. And we still have a very low cost, administrative cost per dollar. But there's another fantastic example, and that is Dubai Cares and the government of the United Arab Emirates. I believe this missing piece of taking money from all the hundreds and hundreds of people who would be more than happy to give and help local communities to start and create institutions like Dubai Cares, not so much from the viewpoint of going around looking for funds, but to manage and implement it in the right manner. Have you ever thought about doing that? Because I think that is sorely needed in the developing world.
Well, thank you very much, Rajan. I mean, Excellency, let's talk about this in the board.
Thank you very much for your endorsement of our work and for your continuous commitment to the causes that we believe in, that we all believe in here. Tariq and I and other members of the board and certainly other members of the executive committee of Dubai Cares have long debated different areas in which Dubai Cares could go onto. We always, however, come back to the fact that we were created for a very simple, clear, laser-focused mission. It started 8-9 years ago for access to primary education, which is why the stat I gave you guys, 60 to 70 million children don't have access to primary education. Then after the SDGs were announced, it was clear that if you just focus on primary, it's not enough because you can get kids through until age 9 and 10. And then if you drop out of them, they drop out of life. You need to take them all the way through. And hence, our focus now on quality education. The reason why I bring this to you at this stage is it is too easy to lose sense of your own genesis, why you're here, to do what you need to do, and to make sure that you do that day in and day out, and for that mission to be super clear. It's very easy to lose track of the importance of institutionalizing what you're doing, of creating the strong monetary and evaluation mechanism so that when we do launch that program in Mali, which you pointed to, that we have confidence that that program is actually effective. You can't just give the money and then walk away from it. We have folks that travel, I don't know, most of our program budget is based on travel. They are always on the go, checking, reviewing, designing the program with the community, not in some fancy office in Dubai. We're not going to decide what Mali needs. We're not going to decide what's convenient for Ouagadougou. That has to be done by them. We facilitate, we monitor, we evaluate. We are part and parcel of that team. I've always been resistant to grow more. This is a debate we have all the time. Because as you said, Vivian, it's good to do the little things well. Become too big, you get too excited. You forget almost why you're there. Because you want to do this, and then you want to do that, and then you want to do something else. We're here with a very, as I said, laser-sharp focus on making sure that our raison d'être, the reason why we're here, is to continue bit by bit, child by child, community by community, school by school, teacher by teacher, provide better quality education for all, and then continue to advocate that in a determined, relentless, continuous way. Could we do more advocacy work in that field? I think it's definitely worth exploring because then you automatically amplify your impact. Dubai Cares doesn't become alone. It has inspired others to do the same. And in our region, which is very giving, and in this part of the world that has tremendous need for it, then our impact can be multiplied. Thank you.
Anyone from the audience? Chris? Mike? His name is Skinder, but I mentioned I wanted the mic. Not Mike.
Your Excellency, Tariq, and all the speakers, thank you for such a wonderful presentation. We're proud as Chevron to be a big supporter of Dubai Cares. I think the work that's being done is great, and I wanted to ask a question really of Her Excellency in terms of the Sustainable Development Goals and what your perspective is on our progress, especially as it pertains to education and quality education. Are we doing enough? What's the view as you discuss this across different governments?
Thank you, Chris. And thank you for your support for Dubai Cares and for other very worthy causes. I'll also open it up to Mohammed and Vivian, who may have a thing or two to add about the SDGs. We last met in New York on this particular platform. I believe that we are doing what we can, but that is not enough. When I say we are doing what we can, I speak of us here in Dubai Cares. I think there's more that can be done that could also include the private sector in a far more impactful manner. I've changed a little bit the strategy of Dubai Expo 2020 to pay a special attention and focus on the SDGs. We actually have a pavilion dedicated to what the world would look like if we achieve 2030 and what the world would look like if we don't. The problem with the SDGs is that people don't understand that this isn't just some UN acronym. The SDGs are about what the future of your life could be. If you look at those 17 goals, they're not lofty, big, fancy things. That's what you would pray for. It's what you would talk about with friends and family. We need to bring the SDG conversation and therefore action from somewhere up here to somewhere amongst communities and people. And that, I think, is a journey that is absolutely critical and necessary. The cost of not achieving the Sustainable Development Goals is monumental. We cannot afford, this generation, the next generation, cannot afford to have a world, a planet, that actually hasn't achieved its SDGs. And countries are all responsible in helping us get there. In Dubai Cares, we ensure that the programs we designed are cognizant of SDGs and are advocates of SDGs. But again, the more you talk about acronym, the more you lose your audience. And it's about how do you translate those 17 into what a better world would look like. I would love to give the opportunity to Mohammed to say something about the SDGs, if you allow me.
For sure. Thank you. The SDG is a dream, but the greatest achievement in human history has always began in the imagination, in our imaginations. We've imagined, before you started your businesses, you imagined what your businesses would look like. And along the way, you tweaked it. You worked day in and day out to be successful. That's what the SDG is about. And to follow Her Excellency, take the acronym out. Imagine that behind each SDG is your family member. It's your sister, your brother, your child. Now imagine that behind each one of those 17 SDGs, if you don't do something, their lives depend on it. What you do determines whether they live a great life or whether they live a terrible life. That's what the SDG is about. So we have a long way to go to achieve the SDGs. It's not just about government. It's also with the private sector. Promise without delivery is as bad. Actually, promise without delivery is worse than no promise at all. So we should do more. The private sector, it is our responsibility. It is your responsibility to work with the civil societies, to work with government, to ensure that each and every one of the 17 SDGs are being accomplished. Because at the end of the day, our security depends on it. 1.3 billion of the world's youngest population are in the continent of Africa. Imagine what they could achieve if you invest in the SDGs. But also imagine what they could do if they're not properly invested in. That's why I believe in SDGs. And that's why I think we will not succeed tomorrow, but we will eventually get there. 1,000 miles always starts with a step. And we are taking the step forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Vivian, what do you think? I mean, what Her Excellency and Mohammed said when it comes to the SDGs and taking the acronym out, and do you think what's built into the SDG 4 would help support girls and women, whether they're in conflict or non-conflict? If you take, again, the acronym out and invest into the SDGs, will the problem be solved?
Thank you so much for the question. Interestingly enough, I was part of the youth group during the consultative meetings leading to the adoption of the Sustainable Development Goals in 2015. And I totally agree with both the Excellency and Mohammed that we need to do more, right? But in particular, when you look at the Sustainable Development Goal 4, and it's basic foundation for all the other 16 Sustainable Development Goals. Because if you don't know about your rights, if you don't have an education, you don't know about your rights, then how are you going to be able to get a job to end the SDG 1, which is on ending poverty, or access to clean water and sanitation? So it's the basic foundation, and it cuts across all the other Sustainable Development Goals. But I've been a very vocal champion for translating the Sustainable Development Goals in a language that the local people can understand. Because if you look at the UN blueprint, the jargons are really hard, even for like the educated ones, they still struggle to understand it. So what about somebody in, again, we'll go back to Bamako, a kid in Bamako trying to know about the Sustainable Development Goals or know the role that they can play? Because it's not only about the government and it's not only about the private sector, but also just us as individual citizens, us as young people, as students at school, what role can you play? And even teachers, because teachers have a big role to play in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. But if they themselves, and honestly, I've traveled across both on the continent and outside the continent, and I go to schools and I talk about Sustainable Development Goals, and teachers themselves look at me like, what are you talking about? So if teachers are not equipped, then how do you expect the students themselves to have an understanding of these goals? And even, I'm pretty sure the people in the room today that really don't understand what Sustainable Development Goals is. But it's not because they are not educated, but the language, it's really hard to understand. And the first way for people to actually take action is for them to have the information and understand how they can use this information. So the problem with the Sustainable Development Goals is the language really needs to be localized. The actions need to be localized. The resources need to be localized, locally mobilized, and that is the only way we can be able to fast track to 2030, because 2030 is around the corner.
Well said, well said. Any question? I'll take one there, and then we'll go back to Rajan maybe.
Hello, folks. My name is Dave Variani. I'm happy to let you guys know that I spent the last 35 years building businesses in Africa. And one of the businesses we do is run colleges. Very happy to let Mohammed know that I run a college in Sierra Leone. So something good is happening there. We run IT training colleges in Sierra Leone, in Liberia, and in Ghana. And we've just opened up, and I spent $30 million of my own money opening our engineering college in Ghana. It's going to be one of the best state-of-the-art. We have a guy from MIT that runs it. So a lot of interesting things are happening in Africa. I think Dubai Cares should also look at looking at good private enterprises that are doing a lot for social impact. I'd like to inform the larger business community it's great to do business in Africa, challenging. It is profitable if you give it a long runway. But the most important satisfaction is we create tremendous social impact. So good to be here. And I think Dubai Cares is doing fantastic, so well done.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Rajan.
Sorry, this is more of a statement, but I believe one of the other key ingredients in ensuring that whether it's primary or secondary education or any education formal outside your family, because I think your beginning is very important, is to also ensure that there is sufficient education to create the teachers of the future, and to ensure in our children that they are men and women who should be respected as much as you would respect your elders or your parents or whatever that you do in life. And this is something I've also noticed in the developing world, where unfortunately the respect for teachers when I was being educated and born and brought up is almost non-existent today. And to the extent that even materially they are as almost like beggars, which is very sad. So I think this is also something which all of us should make our governments understand, that you want your children, we all want our children to have a good future. Education is a fundamental, but who is going to give that education? You better let's make sure the people who do it themselves are highly educated and capable.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, thank you, Rajan. I mean, spot on. Teachers are the silver bullet when it comes to education. And without teachers, without quality teachers, students will not get quality learning. And one of the things that we invest in is teacher training. We have a big portfolio of teacher training programs globally. We have moved on beyond teacher training. Now what we're doing is we're motivating teachers. So we have different NGOs which now they train, they build the capacity of ministries in these countries to motivate teachers. So let alone a teacher being able to teach and has quality teaching, but maybe the teacher is not motivated despite the fact that he has quality in his teaching. So we moved beyond that, and now we're building upon the teacher motivation. Not only that, just recently, now we're also building the capacity of the head teacher, which we call principals. And now we're building the capacity of head teachers on how he can manage the teachers in schools in these rural areas. So I totally agree with you. Without teachers, there won't be any learning. Absolutely, absolutely. I'll sit with you maybe. Just prepare a small check and I'll sit with you on the side and then we can talk about this part. No, he's a good friend. He's a good friend. Any remarks from your end on teachers?
I think it's a question on
yeah? Yeah, please.
My name is Olivia. This is my husband, Jeremy. Everyone is asking which organization you come from. We're not organization, we're individual. This year we are donating a school. And all I want to say is I really thank Your Excellency and Tarek and Nadia for the help. It gave us opportunity to do some good deed. My husband asked me why we choose education. There are millions of charities, yeah? I said, you are from England, I'm from China. The difference between developing country and developed country are the education. We had a terrible war 60 years ago. Everything is wiped out. And then the poor people become in power as the communism, and the country was poor for 10, 20 years, yeah? It's like at the bottom of the world. Until the government decided to put money into education, money into education, money into education. So now we are so we are trained to be clever. So now that's why the GDP of China is great, and then Dubai is a new country. Why Dubai is on top of the map? Because everyone gave very good education. So that's why I say to Jeremy, really, education is the future, as all you said, is the future. It's how we can improve a country, a nation, and the whole world. And we really thank you for giving us the chance to donate.
Thank you very much.
You.
Yeah. Jeremy and his wife are new donors to Dubai Cares. They're donating for a school in which country was it? In Nepal, okay? And they're doing it at the birthday of their child. So they're raising funds, and it's going to be this coming week, right? Yeah, so thank you very much again.
The reason why we collecting funds, like really donating a school in Nepal is the highest expensive school in the list. But it's for everyone here, it's only 150,000 dirham. It's not a huge money to us. I'm sure everyone here can afford for a simple check. But my monk master was telling me, you need to involve people. It's not about how much you can donate, how much you can give. You need to involve people to have the side initiative. Even they pay 10 dirham, we thank them very much. That's what I said in the invitation.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Khalifa.
Hi, my name is Mohammed. I'm from Chevron. Like Chris said, we're very proud to be a part of this today and here today. I was thinking when I was hearing Mohammed and Vivian talking, maybe it's a thought or an idea or a suggestion. After a decade or more than a decade that Dubai Cares is in this education thing around the world, have they thought of those children that started with them till the time now they have graduated from high school or even university, to take them as employees or full-time employees to be ambassadors for them, full-time ambassadors in the countries they started with? Because I see Mohammed and Vivian, when they were talking, they were very proud of the program they've been through. And I think maybe it's a thought, maybe it's already there, I'm not sure. But I think taking those children, not all of them, 1 or 2 or 3, as part of the program to actually execute it in the countries they initiated from would be something that will execute the vision and the mission of Dubai Cares and empower through education and reach the goals to a better level. So I was just thinking of that.
Thank you. Thank you. May I? Yeah. Well, what was your name? Mohammed. Mohammed, again, another important remark. We have this in our agenda. Let's not forget we're 11 years young. So let's call them our students. Our students have not reached that level yet. And we just embarked upon youth empowerment just last year. To answer your question, it's part of our strategy and agenda. Yes, the team is looking into this, and we are yet to have a board meeting very soon, hopefully next month. This is part of the agenda to discuss this with the chair and the board members, that exactly what you're saying. What is beyond education? What happens to those children? But let's not forget one thing. Not all those children will have the chances that Mohammed and Vivian had. And it's only those children who will get those chances in their countries based on the context and the environment they're at. Those are the ones which we can take as role models and let them speak out loudly globally. So it's very hard to detect, but it's not impossible. We do have partners, we do have the governments there, we have their names, everything is there. It's just a matter of when is the right time to do this, and just set up a plan. And just to answer your question, it's part of the plan and we have it in mind, definitely.
Can I answer that?
Yeah, please.
Actually, Tariq, you already have ambassadors on the ground. Because I remember when I was in Bamako in April, and one of the programs that you did with UNICEF, and the kids themselves were talking about how they're very proud of the work that Dubai Cares is doing on the ground. Now they have access to clean water and sanitation, and they have toilets. So you already have ambassadors, just not like institutionalized, but you do have them on the ground.
So this program she's mentioning, it's in Mali, and this was a 2010 program. So this is 8 years old, which finished 4 or 5 years ago. And I'm really happy and proud to hear that children are talking about it.
Tarek, we have some questions from our live stream. If you we
please.
can give them the opportunity. We have H.E, I am a student in year 12, Dubai. I live in Dubai. And your stories are so inspiring and touching. I have been living here for a few years, and I have always wanted to be directly involved in everything that happens. My question, how can we be more actively involved that will actually bring change and cause impact?
Tough question from a 12-year-old. You want to take it?
To Ashley, thank you for caring. Because I think one of the biggest challenges, and I think Vivian, you mentioned it, is a lack of empathy. People are so busy doing what they feel is so important that they don't spend a moment to consider the importance of compassion and empathy, and they're just very happy with what they currently have. So I commend her, and I commend the environment that she's in, her school, her parents, her friends, that there is a cadre of individuals that care enough about wanting to do more and wanting to do better. There are thousands of ways to create an impact and thousands of ways to make change. And I would encourage her to not only look at what Dubai Cares has to offer in terms of volunteer opportunities, but also to study a little bit more what these SDGs are. If she did something as simple as talk to her parents about no plastic in the house. Let us no longer buy the small bottles of plastic for water. Let's have a larger one, and let's just use glasses. Let's not have straws anymore. Are we recycling at home? Are we recycling in our classroom? If not, can I speak to the principal of the school and see if that's a possibility? Those are all, they might seem like simple and small. They're not simple, they're not small. That is how things change. And so I would, as I said, after applauding her and commending her, I would say there's a lot more than what meets the eye, and you are already such an incredible agent of change.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Mohammed, Vivian, do you want to take anything? What can be done
I think
globally?
When people imagine change, people always think that the goal is to change the world. My goal, and when it comes to change, it's not to change the world. You can never change the world. But it's to balance the scale. Because there will always be bad things happening around the world. That's just the nature of the world. But how can we make sure that the scale is a little bit more favorable to the good things? And I don't believe that there are more bad people in the world than there are good people. It's just the bad people are proactive and the good people are reactive. So to create change, we must be proactive.
Yeah. Well, my 2 cents on this one very quickly is we have to have a system change in countries when it comes to different thematics for education. And another thing, which exactly what you said, Rajan, we have to have new models for teachers, whether they get motivated or training teachers, to have that quality component in it and embed that within the education system. There's a question there.
My name is El Hashimy from Emirates NBD, Corporate Philanthropy. And I just want to say that thank you so much for sharing with us your stories. It was pretty inspiring for me. Currently at Emirates NBD, we do provide a platform, an online donation platform, and Dubai Cares is one of them. So I can't wait till 2019. We'll work together to develop programs and allow our customers to contribute directly to you, to Dubai Cares. So what we normally do is develop programs and give a mission, for instance, for 3 months or whatever campaign, and then we ask our customers, whoever wants to contribute, including our employees. So whoever has an account, he can contribute on our app or online donation.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, time is against us. If there's no more questions, we can...
One at the back.
One last one.
Thank you so much, everyone. My name is Abdurrahman. I'm a Dubai Cares employee. Mohammed, your story has touched me in a way because I've actually met child soldiers before, like previous child soldiers. And it's, you know, it's very kind of emotional to talk to a previous or an ex-child soldier about these experiences. And it's so hard to kind of, basically you can't put yourself in someone's shoes when they've been in a situation like this, right? So I want to ask you, like, what makes someone who's been in that vicious cycle of like violence, there is nothing. And there's a lot of money in being a child soldier for a child. Because I remember the person who was talking to me was telling me, like, my mom was out paying the guerrillas so that I can stay in school. And it was really impressive that his mom was like beating him and stuff like that. Not, advocating for beating children, but it was her way to basically stop her child from being a child soldier. So what made you stop being it? Right? What made you think of another way?
My situation is a rather unique one where none of the decisions were ever mine. The rebels walked in and they played God on the lives of my entire family. And since then on, there's no one to go and say, okay, let's get him out. I stopped being a child soldier because the world, for the first time, I usually say our lovely friends at the UN always manage to arrive fashionably late. And so they arrived fashionably late, 11, 12 years late, and the war eventually ended. And so to me, I was rescued. I was rescued by an Italian priest who stood in the eyes of great evil and told the people that had taken 5 years of my life to let me go. And so he took us, and it was right around the time when there were a lot of international organizations that had floated on the shores of Freetown trying to help. And so for me, I like to equate everything that happened to serendipity. All my opportunities have been because I have been at the right place at the right time, and mainly because 99.99% of the people who've had the biggest impact in my life have been women. And without them, I don't think I would be here. So I don't know if I answered your question.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, friends, you wanna, please?
Okay, first of all, I would like to thank Tariq for the opportunity. But again, if once we leave this room, I hope this conversation doesn't really end here. And I haven't been told to say this, but I hope you continue being ambassadors of Dubai Cares, continue sharing the work that Dubai Cares is doing with the communities, with your business partners, with your friends, with your family, because it's collaborative
really never
effort.
was told to say any of this. Right, Farah?
It's not our style at all.
No, it's not at all. Thank you, Vivian. Thank you.
Yeah, but I believe that it's through collaborative effort that we can be able to make sure that every child has an education. Okay, sorry. Every child has an education. Your presence here means everything to me. And I hope that you realize the power in your voices. You may have the financial resources, but the power in your voice is what's going to be able to affect change. So please keep the momentum, continue talking about and advocating for education for each and every child, and continue supporting the work of Dubai Cares because you've already seen the impact. So thank you again.
Thank you, Vivian. Thank you. You cannot do this to me. I'm wrapping up. You cannot do this to me. Well, friends, Dubai Cares' success over the past 11 years was not possible at all without the support of the entire UAE community, which involves organizations and individuals such as yourself. So thank you very much for all the support. Today, Dubai Cares is reaching over 18 million children globally in these developing countries, and we're covering 57 of those developing countries. So thank you very much. This would not have been possible without your support, contribution, and your belief into our cause. Every child has the right to education and a bright, promising future. Together, we will continue to make a difference in the lives of millions of children and young people around the world and help them look forward to a future full of hope, prosperity, and peace. God bless, and thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Likewise. Thank you for coming. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.